When people think of Visa, they think of credit cards, but Visa is so much more than just a credit card company. It's a technology and innovation company that's making digital payments a reality for consumers, businesses, banks, and governments all around the world. At Visa, they have a simple and unwavering vision that can be traced back to their beginnings in 1958 to be the best way to pay and be paid for everyone, everywhere. They know that every Visa transaction is a promise. Whether you're at a food truck outside the stadium or paying your fancy league dues online, Visa wants to provide you with the most secure and easy payment experience possible. All you have to figure out is, where would you like to be? Visa, everywhere you want to be.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe. This is Nick Wright. Head coach Eric Mangini joining us this morning.
Good to see you, Coach.
A big thank you to all of you for waking up early with us on this Veterans Day, and a special thank you to the active and former members of the U.S. military for their time and their service. Man, we had a great weekend in the NFL. An unexpected weekend.
Unexpected is correct.
In the NFL this weekend.
You just got a gleam in your eye,
following a very productive Saturday in college football as well. This is a great weekend if you stayed home and watched sports all weekend.
It was a weekend.
All right, let's start with a little Sunday night football to kick things off this morning. Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys hosting the Minnesota Vikings. Two very similar teams. Dallas driving late, down 4th and 5. Dak's pass to Zeke incomplete. Quiet night for Ezekiel Elliott, just 63 yards, no scores. Vikings pressed all night, left it open for one last Cowboys try at the end. Dak's Hail Mary intercepted. So the Cowboys lose 28-24 to Minnesota. They dropped to 5-4 on the season. Here's Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott after a disappointing loss.
I've said it before, we're going to lock arms. We're going to get better. This tape has a lot for us to learn from. Sure, it's not the outcome that we wanted, but has a lot for us to learn from and to grow from, and we'll move and become better because of it.
Nick, you can't blame that guy for yesterday's loss. We wanted to see a big game from Dak Prescott against a good team, and you got that. So who is to blame for what happened to the Cowboys last night?
Let me start just quickly with what you said. Dak was sensational. I thought this was one of the 4 or 5 best football games I've seen Dak Prescott play. A national television night game, good team, your team needs it. And after a slow start, which is indicative for the Cowboys really the last 6 weeks of football, Dak was clicking, hitting multiple 3rd and 10 pluses, distributing the ball to everyone. The connection he had with Amari Cooper, toe tapping on the sideline repeatedly, including on a touchdown, was sensational, which is why I put the blame for this specific loss on whoever the hell's calling plays. Now, I don't know if it's Jason Garrett. I don't know if it's Kellen Moore. I don't know if it's hive mind combination of the two. But when you have your quarterback playing that well and the Vikings defense on their heels, you're down 4 points. You have a drive that starts on your 6-yard line. Dak is 6 of 7 throwing the football on that drive. Gets you to a 2nd and 2 at the 11-yard line. And Zeke, however great he is, he was not having a great game, and as coaches pointed out, oddly, in his career, has not been a great short yardage back. He's been great at almost everything else, not a great red zone or short yardage back, to all of a sudden go away from Dak to run Zeke on 2nd, run Zeke on 3rd, and then a pass play where they throw the ball to Ezekiel Elliott. Now, that decision might have been on Dak, but they should have never been in a 4th and 5. They were moving the ball through the air with Dak Prescott, who yesterday was the best player on the Cowboys by far. To take the ball out of his hands in that spot in what could have been a critical win for the Cowboys, Coach, to me, it's just calling the wrong plays, and it almost felt like they were worried about leaving too much time if they scored, rather than first trying to make sure they scored the football, which down 4 they obviously had to do.
I think that's a little bit of an unfair assessment, and time was a factor, and they were trying to shorten the game, understanding that if they got it in, they would want to limit the amount of time that the Vikings had to come back. But when you look at those play calls and when you look at the calls throughout the course of the game, one of the reasons that Dak had such a good game is because there was a commitment to running the ball. And oftentimes Dallas goes away from that so early, and then teams adjust knowing that it's going to be a pass-first game, and it's nowhere near as effective in the passing game as what we saw last night. I thought Dak played extremely well. I thought that the decision to keep giving Ezekiel Elliott chances, I don't see a big issue with that. Granted, it didn't work out, and I think this is what we always do. We look at it after the fact and say, how could you possibly give Zeke the ball? If they'd thrown 3 times, everybody would have been sitting here this morning going, how could you possibly not have given Zeke the ball in those critical situations? And even on the last play, Jason talked about the different options that they had. That 4th and 5, got to have it play, and you've got a good matchup. You've got Zeke against a linebacker. It should work. It did work. The ball just was a little bit, not late, but a little bit behind.
And it was a great play by Kendricks.
It was a great play by Kendricks. But the matchup makes sense. You've got a linebacker covering from inside out. You've got an outside breaking route, one-on-one. Look, it didn't work, but wasn't a bad decision.
And I understand your point that the commitment to the run early put Dak in some of those positive passing situations later. But what's also true, and the reason that I thought this was one of the best games I've seen Dak play, is we talk about all the time that the best quarterbacks can be successful when everyone knows you're throwing. When the whole stadium knows you got to throw. And during the comeback, because they were down 14-0 to start this football game. And by the way, the slow starts, I don't know if that's just on the coaching staff, but that's something else that I know you want to discuss, Jenna. But they 3rd and 12, 3rd and 12, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 14. Those are all conversions through the air when the whole stadium knows you're passing once they were down 14-0 as they were trying to climb back into the game. They went to Amari, they went to Gallup, they went 3 straight to Randall Cobb, who had his best game as a Cowboy. I thought Dak was dealing. And you're right, if they had thrown 3 straight times after 2nd and 2 and not gotten it, we would have criticized them. But the way Dak was playing, man, it feels almost impossible that they wouldn't have gotten it had they let him continue to throw the football.
But the problem is that they were down 14-0 before you knew it, because they're outscoring their opponents the whole game. It's in the first quarter. They're getting outscored. I think it's 55-37 or something this season. Why is that such a hard thing for them to overcome? It's been indicative of every game they've come out and played this season.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. And sometimes that happens during the course of the season where either you come out and you have a slow start at the beginning of the game, or you're a slow starting team at the start of the second half, and you try a lot of different things. And typically it's a different problem each time. And I'm sure that's something that they've been addressing. They've been trying to figure out, but they can't quite get that formula down. And I wish there was one easy answer for something like that, but there isn't. It's a combination of things that have led him to this position.
And now it's a 2-month trend. Like even the Miami game in week 3 that they ended up winning. If you remember, that was a very close game at halftime. I want to say 10-6, but it was nip and tuck at halftime. But then since then, in the first half against New Orleans, 3 points. Yep. Down 31-3 to Green Bay. Down 21-3 to the Jets before a furious comeback that stalled out with a 2-point conversion, failed attempt at the end of that game. Down 12-3 to the Giants with 3 minutes left in the first half. Now they end up blowing the Giants out, so we forget about it, and down 14-0 to Minnesota. That is an enormous problem for any football team, much less a football team that has what we consider to be the best player on their offense is their running back. It's hard to stay committed to the run the way you talk about if you're down 2 scores by the second quarter each and every week, as they have been for 2 months now.
And with those problems, when you start emphasizing it so much, it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Sure.
You can spend so much time and effort trying to figure out what that problem was, and sometimes you just gotta move off from the focus of it in order to get guys to relax in that situation and just go out and play, as opposed to keep adding pressure to the start of the game.
All right, so now the Cowboys and the Eagles are both tied at 5-4 in the NFC East. Are you worried now that maybe the team we thought we were more confident would pull away from the Eagles might not even make the playoffs in the Cowboys?
Oh, well, listen, the NFC East is one playoff team division. Like, there's one chair for 2 teams. There's with the Seahawks, with all of a sudden the Vikings again, with Carolina, even though they lost yesterday. Like, there's not going to be a wild card team out of the NFC East. So, yeah, you've got to be worried about Dallas, especially when, now, Coach, we've made it 9 minutes into the show. Let me look at the schedule for a moment for you. Especially when you realize Philly, now after the bye, they have New England and Seattle. That's very difficult. But then it's Miami, the Giants, Washington, Dallas, and the Giants again. So your final 5 weeks of the season, Miami's played better of late. The Giants just lost to the Jets, which should never happen. And then you have a chance to get revenge against Dallas. Like, Philly's schedule sets up so much better for them, which is why it was important Dallas keep this cushion that they have to go along with having beaten them head-to-head.
Well, you can see how easy it is for this to happen, Jenna. Nick has a slow start. It takes him 9 minutes to get to predicting the future. And do I like the Cowboys' chances? I don't know, because I don't know which Cowboys team we're going to get. Are we going to get the Cowboys team that wins 3 in a row, or the Cowboys team that loses 3 in a row? There was a lot of great things last night, especially from Dak, that I hadn't seen on a consistent basis or throughout the course of the game like we saw last night. But there are issues with the schedule moving forward. And the advantage that Philly has is there are enough veterans on that team. And even though they've had controversy, even though they've had a significant amount of injuries, they've lost, going into this past week, 48 games from significant contributors versus the Cowboys, which I think was 14 or somewhere along the line, nowhere near the number. And they found a way to push through that. So I give Philly an edge from a resilience standpoint and from an experience standpoint, where it feels like the Cowboys are trying to convince themselves that they belong in that spot.
And once again, we've yet to have a game where all three of the superstars, Dak, Amari, and Zeke, put together amazing games. We had it from Dak and a little bit from Amari Cooper last night. Are you ready for what's ahead? You can't always predict the future, but you can game plan for it. Generations of families and businesses have harnessed the power of Pacific to help them reach their unique goals. Whether you need to save money to meet your needs, ensure your family is protected, or make sure you don't run out of money, Pacific Life has a variety of financial solutions that can help. Pacific Life counts more than half of the 100 largest U.S. companies as its clients and has been named one of the 2019 world's most ethical companies by the Ethisphere Institute. Protecting what matters most to people for 150 years and counting, that's the power of Pacific. Ask a financial professional about how Pacific Life can help you game plan for your future, or visit www.pacificlife.com. All right, let's move on to the Chiefs and the Titans. Patrick Mahomes back under center for KC.
Welcome back, Patrick.
He didn't miss a beat fourth quarter. Mahomes, watch him. The nasty jump pass to McCole Hardman, who is a fast football player, breaking away for the 63-yard touchdown. Chiefs up 9. Mahomes, 446 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a few little skips, but everything feels good. Titans wouldn't go away, though. Ryan Tannehill looking, finding Adam Humphries for the go-ahead touchdown. 2-point conversion would stretch the lead to 3. So Chiefs would get one last chance to tie. They need Harrison Butker to nail this from 52 yards out. That's not even close. It was blocked. Chiefs lose 35-32. Kansas City now dropping to 6-4 on the season. Nick, let's start with you. Why did KC lose this game?
They did everything you can do to lose a football game that you have no business losing. Now, let me make this clear on the front end. I still believe in this football team. Now, my prediction that they weren't going to lose a game until next season, that lasted all of 0 weeks. So that one I got to eat, and I was wrong about that clearly. But you look at what went into them losing this game. You have a fumble by your running back. It's returned for a touchdown. You miss an extra point, one of the most reliable kickers in the whole league, Harrison Butker. The biggest reason they won last week's game without Patrick Mahomes against Minnesota was Butker was brilliant. He misses an extra point. They stop Tennessee on 4th and 17 with less than 2 minutes left. The game should be over. But Tennessee has all 3 timeouts. And on 3rd and 2, they run a weird quarterback rollout where it comes into play. You could lose yards because you don't want Mahomes to throw it away because you want the clock to run. And now all of a sudden you have a far more difficult field goal. On that field goal, the ball is snapped too early or the holder's not ready, one of the two. And then you give up a drive to Ryan Tannehill. And then on the next field goal, you let it get blocked. Every single one of those things had to happen in order for the Chiefs to lose a game that is a crushing loss for them, because you almost at this point can just wave goodbye to the bye. Like they're still in first place in the division, but the Raiders are coming. Now, I think the Chiefs will win the division. I'm not concerned about that, but The best way to the Super Bowl is a bye. The even better way is home field advantage. And when you give away a game like that, you lose the opportunity, certainly for the home field advantage and almost certainly for the bye. So it's a long list of reasons they lost. Patrick Mahomes, obviously not one of them. The only silver lining for the Chiefs is he came out and looked just like Patrick Mahomes looks. In fact, his ankle looked even better than before he had the knee injury, and so he was more mobile. He was sensational. But that's an inexcusable loss for a team that has legitimate Super Bowl aspirations.
Yeah, one of the things that you're not covering, too, is they gave up 8.2 yards a carry, and that's a huge issue. And when you've got a guy like Patrick Mahomes, everybody's going to try to keep him off the field, and they're going to try to run the ball on a consistent basis and chew up the clock, and that can be demoralizing, and more importantly, it just keeps that offensive machine off the field. And then you add in the multiple problems on special teams. It's hard to have a field goal blocked and then have the field goal earlier where you've got the botched snap, and then insult to injury, you roll out and you get intentional grounding, so that was tacked on to it as well. And those mistakes, you're right. It's hard to lose a game when your quarterback plays as well as Patrick Mahomes plays, but it was just a significant amount of just self-inflicted wounds at the end.
And listen, I understand the defense is going to get crushed locally in Kansas City and nationally, and Derrick Henry ran for $180, so that's understandable to a degree, but it should be noted, the defense got the stop they thought they had to get. After the Chiefs kicked a field goal to go up 5, they forced Tennessee off the field in that 4th and 17 I'm talking about. Up to that point in the game, the defense had allowed 20 points. Now, that's not good. Tennessee had scored 27 because of the fumble return for a touchdown. But up to that point in the game, the defense clearly was playing listen, we're not going to be able to stop the run. We're not going to let Tannehill throw the ball on us at all. They had been successful to a degree in that. The defense, until that final drive, had done enough to win if Kansas City was able to just pick up one first down, which they don't go 3 and out the entire football game until that one drive when they have to get the first down, and they essentially take the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands. There's a lot of reasons they lost, none of them acceptable when your quarterback, 24 days from having his kneecap relocated on the field, throws for 450, 3 scores, and doesn't turn the ball over once.
Patrick Mahomes was tremendous yesterday, coming off what he did. Who knows if he was 100% or not. He did everything he wanted to do, and the numbers back it up. But even I was watching the game going, they'll probably run the ball. They'll just give it to Derrick Henry, because they just kept doing it. And he had his way with them all game. And I know that maybe the defense wasn't the major concern, but is their run defense, or even special teams if you want to throw in there, is that what's going to keep them from going all the way this year?
Yeah, defense has been the consistent problem, but when it's a problem with the run defense and teams can use that to control the clock and shorten the game, and look, everywhere I've been, when you face one of those elite quarterbacks, you've got to start with that first. It's, okay, how are we going to stop them, but how are we also going to keep them off the field and have long, sustained drives so that we're not in a fast break type game where we know we can't possibly match their offensive output. Yeah, that's a huge concern. And the mistakes on special teams, it's rare to see back-to-back mistakes like that on a field goal. It just doesn't happen.
And here's why I'm not worried about the special teams in particular. One is Butker's a great kicker. He had a bad day with the missed extra point. Those other 2 field goals, not on him. The bad snap, he never gets to kick. The other one, the Titans said afterwards they timed the snap, and that's why they were able to. It looked like they were offsides in real time, but they weren't. And so Butker, I'm not concerned with. And Dave Taub is one of the best in the world as far as coordinating special teams. They've been great at this for a long time. And the Chiefs are still a team nobody wants to play. They're still a team that in any moment, we talk about can they protect a lead, but no lead is safe against them. I still believe that they can be the AFC representative out of the Super Bowl, but a game like yesterday means in order to get there, they're almost assuredly going to have to win 3 playoff games. A game like yesterday almost assuredly ensures that they're going to have to win 2 of those playoff games on the road to get there. And Patrick Mahomes, I have immense faith in him, but we've never seen him play a road playoff game. Now we're going to have to see that, something Kansas City hoped they were going to be able to avoid this year.
All right, time now for Put a Grade on It, sponsored by CarMax. Despite the loss, Mahomes, as we talked about, was fantastic. 446 yards, 3 touchdowns in his return from that dislocated kneecap. Nick, put a grade on Mahomes' game.
You got to give him an A. The only reason it's not an A+ is because on that 3rd and 2, he wasn't able to make some type of magic, even though the play was broken down and iced the game right there. He was as good as any player in the entire league yesterday. I give him an A.
Yeah, I give him an A as well, and I know I'm typically a hard grader, but when he comes back from the injury that he had, there's a lot of uncertainty. It doesn't matter who you are, but you go through that game wondering whether or not it's going to dislocate again, whether or not you're truly healthy, and for him to perform the way he did and not have it be an issue, it's got to be an A with the arrow pointing up.
Yeah.
All right, on to the New England Patriots. They're using their bye week to stay out of the headlines, unless, of course, you consider a potential return of Rob Gronkowski newsworthy. Reports are that last season, when Gronk was cleaning out his locker, Robert Kraft came up to him, told him he wanted the tight end to return for November, December, and a playoff run this season. So, Coach, do the Patriots need Gronk to return for them to lock up their 7th Lombardi trophy?
Well, it's so interesting that somehow people brought what was said last year at the end of the season into this moment. Those things are said, and they're offhanded remarks. Would Gronk be a great addition to New England? Yeah, he'd be a great addition. But when you see him on TV and you see the things he's doing, it doesn't look like he's spending a ton of time in the weight room. It doesn't look anywhere near what he looked like when he was playing football. It's not that easy just to jump back on the field, especially if you're a guy who has a history of injuries, you haven't been training for football, and then suddenly everybody thinks that you're going to come in and be able to perform at a high level. It's not easy to do, and I'd be shocked if they even get close to talking about it.
And by the way, there's a drop-dead date for this. Shortly, a few days after Thanksgiving is when, if he's not back on the roster by then, he's not able to come back this season for the playoffs. So this isn't something that in the middle of December he could decide, you know what, just for the playoffs. So we'd have a few weeks to know whether this is or isn't happening. I would be shocked if he comes back. Not only because what we see him doing with Fox. A couple months ago, the Maverick and LeBron show, the shop, was taped here in New York City, and I was at the taping, and Gronk was there. Gronk seems so happy with what he's doing right now. So, and all of his public comments are, public and private comments, it would appear, are that football was wearing on him. Now, that doesn't mean he won't.
Not just physically.
But no, that's what I mean, mentally. That the grind of it, that he needed a break from it. What are you laughing about, Coach?
Well, look, sometimes Gronk was in a great situation because Gronk just being able to be Gronk at some other team might not have been the best thing for his career.
Sure.
He goes to New England where things are set in stone and there's a way to do things, and that discipline, I think that helped him significantly. But it is hard. It is hard in New England.
And so there's the brutality of football, no matter who you play for, especially the way Gronk played, which was as bruising of a style as a tight end in the modern NFL can play, and a great blocker, and a guy who went over the middle and took hits. You saw the body armor he would have to wear at this point in his career. And the mental part of it, which you're talking about, which is day in, day out. Doesn't matter that on a per-game basis, he might be the best tight end ever, that he's one of 53 in the meeting room. So I do not believe Rob Gronkowski's coming back this year. I do believe there's a reason all of a sudden this story came up, is because people are starting to realize something that I've been saying for the better part of 6 weeks. This Patriot offense is mediocre. This Patriot offense needs an injection of talent. It needs not only an injection of pass catching, but of blocking. Tom Brady needs someone that can give him a little extra time in the pocket, and that sometimes was Rob Gronkowski. It wasn't just that he was the guy they went to on the third and got to have it. It's that he was the guy who helped set the edge on their running plays. And so with no James Devlin, with the injuries on the offensive line, with the rotating cast of characters they've had at tight end, you know why they would want even a 75% Rob Gronkowski. I just don't think if Rob Gronkowski has any inclination to play football again this season. Now, I'm not saying he will never come back, but this season it would be shocking to me.
Now, they have had an infusion of talent. They've picked up Mohamed Sanu. Yep. N'Keal Harry's going to be back here at some point. Ben Watson is starting to get more incorporated into the offensive system. It's just hard for a guy to come off the street and perform at a level that he's used to performing at, especially with his injury history, and especially in a system that's as demanding as New England's is, and add to the fact that you haven't been working out. You haven't been training like a football player, so it's hard to believe he could come back and make a meaningful contribution.
All right, let's Get back to more sports. Most notably, Green Bay Packers hosting the Carolina Panthers. We'll jump ahead to the third quarter. Aaron Jones in for the 13-yard touchdown, his third score of the day. Packers take the 21-10 lead. Jump ahead to the fourth. Snow's coming down. It's getting real at Lambeau. Panthers hanging around thanks in part to that guy, Kyle Allen. Put him in a position to tie the game, down 8. Christian McCaffrey, another great game from him, but he's stuffed at the goal line as the clock hits 0. Packers hold on to get the 24-16 win. They improve to 8-2. Here's Aaron Rodgers after the game.
Winter is here in Green Bay, and we're starting to make this place a tough place to come in again. It's a good football team. I'm proud of our guys. You know, we left some plays out there, especially into the first half, but our defense came up big with some stops. You know, Kyle played really well. They got a good team. Maybe see them down the line.
And, of course, that biggest stop at the very end when they really needed to stop McCaffrey. But, Nick, how badly did Green Bay need this win?
It's an enormous win for Green Bay. The difference between going into the bye 7-3, coming off back-to-back losses where you're a favorite, and going into the bye 8-2, where you can look at the Charger game just as an outlier. And, by the way, as an added bonus, they come off the field and they're like, wait, what happened? You're saying New Orleans lost earlier, and so all of a sudden all of their goals are still in play, particularly considering they get San Francisco, one of the teams that the only team they're looking up at in the standings right after the bye. It's a great win for the Packers, most notably because of what Aaron Rodgers just said. He's a very famous Game of Thrones fan, made a Game of Thrones cameo, so he kind of changed winter is coming to winter is here. But that's important. And playing home games in the playoffs at Lambeau is something Aaron Rodgers, last half-decade, not a lot of experience with. Their last bye was in 2014. Since then, they have played one home playoff game. That was the game after Odell and his friend's boat trip against the Giants in 2016. That's it. So Aaron Rodgers knows it's just not only that the last 2 years they missed the playoffs, but even when they were making the playoffs, they were not positioning themselves to where teams have to come in and play in one of the most impossible places to win a playoff game historically in the NFL, which is Lambeau Field. And coach, this Packer team for the first time in a long time also seems built to where they could win one of those cold, snowy, ugly playoff games. Yeah, Rodgers is sensational because he's almost always sensational, but Aaron Jones was really good. The defense was creating turnovers on Kyle Allen. That looked like a playoff game in a playoff environment, and the Packers came through huge.
Yeah, I'm sure they're happy to play in the cold weather. We saw what they did in the warm weather, and that wasn't very good. and this game was really important because of how bad last game was and how collectively they failed to perform in a big moment, in a moment where they could have put some distance between them and some of the people that are chasing them. And that to me was unfortunate, and I liked what they did yesterday. But there's still some issues. Defensively, they do a great job rushing the passes. They've got the Smith brothers. They're able to rush off the edge, and they're constantly putting quarterbacks under pressure, and they've got the ability to create turnovers. They're very opportunistic defense. I just don't think they've really solved the running game problem. And that, to me, is going to be the Achilles heel as they move forward. The teams that have consistently run the ball against them and
the run game defense problem.
Defensively, defensively the run game. Teams that have consistently run the ball against them have had a lot of success, and it's like we talked about earlier. It keeps Aaron Rodgers off the field. It slows down the pass rush. It changes the dynamic of their defense as a whole. And that, to me, is the concern, whether it's at Lambeau or anywhere else, is how well they've addressed that.
Well, and they'll, I assume, spend a lot of the bye week trying to address that, because after the bye, if they're going to get the 1 seed, they have to beat San Francisco. And San Francisco has been the best running team in the NFC this year by a wide margin. And they're just getting healthier on that front, getting their fullback back, their tackles back who have been out with injury. So if you're a team that struggles against the run, San Francisco is a team that absolutely thus far this season has made you pay for that.
And you said a little earlier, we were discussing, you were surprised that Carolina didn't run the ball more, given that you know what the Packers offer up in their run defense.
Yeah, and when you have a guy like Christian McCaffrey, I know his average is around 20 carries per game, but this is one of those games where you bump it up a little bit. Maybe you go 25, maybe you go 30, just because you realize that's the weakness of the defense, and he's your most explosive player by far.
And especially in that weather and the conditions, too. So if you've been following the show, we have a little back and forth here. I'm more pro Kyle Allen. You're more, I don't know if he's the future for Carolina, Kyle Allen. I thought he played a great game yesterday. I thought he kept the Panthers in it. And terrible conditions on a day when you're playing against the Green Bay Packers, who were at home and were coming off that loss. I thought there was every reason for him to struggle, and he really didn't. Do you feel differently about Kyle Allen after what you saw yesterday?
No, and to me, your evaluation proves my point, which is he did play a great game by his standards. Turned the ball over twice, and his team scored 16 points. Like that, but now, by the way, this is also why the quarterback wins thing is unfair, because this was he played a better game than he played in some of their wins. He played a better game than he did in their win against the Houston Texans when they won 16-10. Team still scored 16 points. One was a win, one was a loss, and he was very poised on that final drive. I didn't think he played a very good game at all until that final drive, and on that final drive, that was a great drive, and you come 1 yard short of potentially tying the game with a 2-point conversion. But no, to me, it's very obvious what Kyle Allen is. He is right now, and this is better than I expected, a very good backup quarterback that if he's your starting quarterback, you better have the most dominant running back in football, which they do. Right. And a great defense, which at times they do. In order to just lose close games to really good teams. Because that is who he is. And by the way, as an undrafted kid who went to 2 colleges and got cut by 2 NFL teams, he is overachieving. And I think that's what you love about him, is that he's overachieving. But it's the NFL. And you don't get extra credit for overachieving. You get credit for achieving at a standard. And I think right now, if Kyle Allen's your quarterback, you got about the 25th best quarterback in the NFL.
Well, he's in about as difficult a situation as you could be in as a young quarterback. You've got to move the ball down that last drive. You're fighting the weather. You're fighting an outstanding pass rush. You're fighting the fact that everybody knows you got to throw the ball, and he was able to do that. And he was able to do that with a lot of poise. So to me, that's a really encouraging part of what we've seen here, because some guys are going to fold in those moments, and we've seen plenty of those drives, especially against Green Bay, where they go back to pass and it's just over before the drive can even get going.
But one of the reasons they were down 14 points, and they scored a touchdown. People criticize them because they went for 2 after they scored the first touchdown. Analytically, that is absolutely the sound move. The only way it hurts you is if you fail twice. But one of the reasons they were in that position was because of the turnovers by Kyle Allen and because the offense was stuck in the mud despite Christian McCaffrey having another 140-yard from scrimmage game. And so I don't want to be too hard on him, but he's now a starting quarterback in the NFL, and the team's going to move on from Cam Newton. He no longer gets judged on this sliding backup quarterback scale. He gets judged on the scale of, can he get you to where you need to get to? And I believe the answer with Carolina is no.
Could he be their starting quarterback next year?
Well, to me, it's going to be how much he continues to progress. And I thought that last drive was a very encouraging part. If you're looking at it organizationally, he shows poise in a big moment in a really tough situation.
Back here, first things first, we're now joined by Bart Scott. Good morning, Bart.
Hello, Coach.
Good morning, Bart.
It's our first time meeting.
First time.
It's not like 2 good
first
defensive
impressions.
minds together.
This is not the time. All right. Well, we got a
Just
lot
trying to drift behind Coach
to talk about. Big Sunday yesterday. Let's start with Dak and the Cowboys, Bart. All right, Bart, if you're looking to blame someone for last night's Cowboys loss, it certainly can't be Dak Prescott, who had a tremendous game. Who would you place last night's loss on?
I would say Jason Garrett, simply because his team continues to come out slow. They're playing from behind, and it takes tremendous energy to be able to come from behind when you get off to a 14-0 start. They may be to close the gap, but it leaves small room for error when you continue to start off slow. And they need to figure out, why are they starting off slow? They're great at making these adjustments, in-game adjustments, but they're starting off slow. Dalvin Cook was great in just controlling the line of scrimmage, and you're really starting to see on the other side Gary Kubiak's influence on this team, because you see this one-cut press the hole, one cut, get vertical, and it starts to wear on the team. And they also took advantage of a very fast defense and used their athleticism and speed against them. And this was just a tough game. We continue to, really try and bury Kirk Cousins, but we have to give him credit because he showed up. And listen, he didn't have to be Dak Prescott, but he was good enough for that football team. He managed the game. He took care of the football. And at the end of the day, they got the victory. You have to give credit to the Minnesota Vikings for going on the road in a tough environment and responding.
And since Week 5, Kirk Cousins is first in the NFL in passing touchdowns, passer rating, and plays of 20-plus yards. Ever since Adam Thielen had apologized to Thielen and Diggs demanded a trade, he's been excellent. But let's stay on the slow starts for a moment. Coach, this is something you and I have talked about off the air that you dealt with once, to the point to where you brought in outside help. Like the slow starts can be an epidemic almost, something that you're searching for the way to get over. I don't know if you want to share the story, but what do you attribute the slow starts to?
Well, look, it happens in a lot of different ways, okay? Sometimes it can be the slow start at the start of the game. Sometimes it can be coming out at halftime and not being able to perform there. Sometimes it's how you play on the West Coast. There's these different situations that for some reason teams don't respond very well to. And you try as a head coach different things. And you may change up the schedule. You may change up the first 15 plays. You may defer. You may take the ball. You've seen it throughout the course of the season where coaches try different things when there's situations like this. But what can happen is when you spend so much time harping on it, focusing on it, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, and everybody is so tensed up at the beginning of the games that it's self-defeating, and I think you almost got to take a step back, relax, and see where that goes.
And it leads to bad decisions, like kicking a 57-yard field goal to start the football game on 4th and 6. The only reason you do that is because it's like, damn it, we're going to be the first to get points on the board. Now, I understand the Cowboys kicker is one of the best kickers in NFL history from 50-plus. And from 60-plus, he has had immense success. I get that. But you don't risk putting your defense in that bad of a position or that early in the football game when you don't have to. You don't know what version of Kirk Cousins is coming out. You don't, right. But you do that because, like you're saying, you're pressing, and it's hard to put this on Dak because Dak was so great yesterday. It's one of the best games he ever played. But when he wasn't good, it was the first few drives. Mm-hmm. And go ahead, Coach.
Well, I'm just saying the flip side of this is, and the upside of this for the Cowboys is, they know they can come back. They know that they can overcome a slow start. They've done it a bunch of times. So there is a resilience that's built up that some other teams don't have, where it's got to go good early or otherwise they go into the tank. The Cowboys have shown resilience, and to me, that's a strength that should help them as the season goes on.
And the slow starts at 3 first-half points against New Orleans, down 31-3 to Green Bay, down 21-3 to the Jets, down 12-3 to the Giants before the Giants made some questionable mistakes at the end of that half to give the Cowboys a lead at the end of the half, down 14-0 yesterday. But the problem for Jason Garrett, Bart, to your point, is the questions about coaching weren't just in the first quarter. It was then at the very end of the football game when we have now seen the type of game Dak is playing, where Dak is completing 3rd and longs repeatedly, where he is distributing the ball to Cooper, to Cobb. Jarwin had a big play. He's playing one of the finest games I've seen him play. You're on the final drive, down 4, so you got to have a touchdown. You don't even face a 3rd down until late in the drive because Dak is being so effective on 1st and 2nd. You have 8 plays on that drive leading into the 2nd and 2. 7 of them are Dak Prescott passes. 6 of them are Dak Prescott completed passes. And then Zeke, for as good as he is, he's not been a great short yardage back, and he's not been a great red zone back. You take the ball out of Dak's hands on consecutive plays. 2nd and 2, Zeke. It doesn't work. 3rd and 2, Zeke again. And then 4th and 5, you throw it to him. That I'm not going to put on the play call because Dak made the decision to throw it to him. But to take the ball out of Dak's hands when he's having one of the best games he's had in years, I think it's the top 5 game of his career. Well, I don't know if that's Jason Garrett or Kellen Moore because I'm not exactly certain who's actually calling the plays. But that was a killer for Dallas because much like the Jets game where they started slow, they had an opportunity to win it at the end, and they did not, and that's why they find themselves in the position they're in.
Well, 3rd and 2 is one of those downs where it can be either or. Now, Ezekiel Elliott has been your workhorse, and I know he's been contained that game, but you understand that you're going for it on 4th down, so you're hoping that Zeke can maybe pop one because they're defending against both the run and the pass. Now, the pass on the last one, when you look out there, you're Dak Prescott, and I don't know if everybody really knows how good of a football player Eric Kendricks is, but you kind of think you like that matchup against your best guy, on the team
Zeke,
that can run, one-on-one that can run pretty good routes. But, Kendrick just made a great play, and you have to tip your cap to him and say, hey, he made a great play. We went with our best player. We liked the matchup. And, congratulations to him.
Coach, does a loss like this for the Cowboys make you rethink where they will be, sort of towards the end of the season, whether they would even make a playoff run at this point?
Well, the whole season for me has made me concerned or wonder where they are. When you start out 3-0, and those teams weren't the toughest teams that they were going to face.
You're being kind, Coach.
And then you go 0-3, and then it's just been so up and down. You don't get the consistency. And when I hear Nick say, you take the ball out of Dak Prescott's hands, I don't think anybody's ever said that in relationship to the Cowboys versus Dak versus Ezekiel Elliott. So I understand why they would go to their best player and who everybody would arguably consider their best player in those clutch moments.
And I understand the best player holistically. I also understand the best player in the context of the game and, to use a basketball term, the hot hand. And by the way, on 2nd and 2 or 3rd and 2, what happened to getting Dak Prescott on the move and letting him use his arms or his legs? Like that, we have now seen, it's a gotta-have-it moment that you talk about all the time, much like the 2-point conversion against the Jets. Yeah. And you're got to have a moment. You go to your 48-year-old tight end. You're got to have, in the Jets game, you're got to have a moment here. You throw, and now, granted, I understand that Kendrick's made a great play, but that's also a hard pass. Like that is, in order to get 5 yards, that ball's traveling 25 yards because it's going so horizontally. And if Kendricks doesn't make the play, Zeke still has to reel it in, get both feet down. I feel like they could have been put in a better position. And in a year where Jason Garrett doesn't have a contract extension, where he is one of the 6 most tenured coaches in football, and the other 6 are Bill Belichick, Sean Payton, Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh, and Pete Carroll. What do all of those guys have in common? They've all been, it's like, which one of these is not like the others? And it's pretty damn obvious which one of these is not like the others. And so they've all been to the Super Bowl. They've all won a Super Bowl. They all have at least 4x the playoff wins as Jason Garrett. Moments like this, and Belichick's numbers are just cartoonish. But it's moments like this that make you feel like, man, when are the Cowboys going to be the team we think they should be? I feel like you're
Well,
angry.
I'm just saying, Ted Marchibroda, you always say in big moments, think players, not plays. And it's hard to criticize Jason Garrett in big moments to going to Ezekiel Elliott and giving him an opportunity to win the game. The last pass, there were options. He chose the matchup against a linebacker with inside leverage. But if he hadn't given the ball to Zeke one of those 2 downs, we'd be sitting here going, how could you not give the ball on 3rd and 2 to your greatest player?
It's just been such an inconsistent season for the Cowboys that you really, honestly, week to week, don't know exactly who they are and how good they could be, and if you can trust them.
And they don't know either.
November and December comes down to these type of games with seeding and things get tight. Pressure bust pipes, and now the Philadelphia Eagles are hot on their heels.
And you might be right, Coach, that if they hadn't given the ball to Zeke, we'd be talking about how do you not give the ball to Zeke. We also might have been talking about a Cowboys comeback win to put them at 7-3, and now we don't know.
Why did KC lose this game?
Because they did everything you have to do to lose a football game when your quarterback plays perfectly. Patrick Mahomes, even if he wasn't coming off an injury, we would say, wow. Even by his standards, that was a great game. The Titans have been a team that has lived off their defense and their running game. Now, they got a good game out of their quarterback for the first time in a while this year, but he is their backup quarterback. That's not who they've been. And Mahomes was brilliant. And they lost because it's almost as if they were making an effort to. Go down the list. They have a fumble by their running back, Damian Williams. It's returned for a touchdown. Harrison Butker, one of the most reliable kickers in the NFL, misses an extra point that proves important later in the game. The defense, the Chiefs defense, the much maligned Chiefs defense, gets off the field inside of 2 minutes, forces an incomplete pass on 4th and 17. They are getting the ball up 5 on Tennessee's 32-yard line with 1:48 left. And they lose because they go 3 and out. Because on 3rd down, they lose yards on a weird Patrick Mahomes rollout instead of trusting him earlier in the drive or running the football there. And they end up setting up where Butker, kick a field goal to go up 8. And they snap the ball too early. And they end up having this nonsense fire drill. And then they let Ryan Tannehill go out there And look, not even like vintage Ryan Tannehill. Vintage Ryan Tannehill wasn't doing none of this. Ryan Tannehill will go out there and look like, I don't know, vintage Steve McNair, the last great Titans quarterback. And then despite that, because Mahomes is Mahomes, he gets him in field goal range. He had 20 seconds, gets him in field goal range, no problem. And that field goal gets blocked. And so the Chiefs, I still believe in this team. I still think they can beat any team in the NFL in any place. But I also thought last week they weren't going to lose again this season. And that lasted all of 4 days, that prediction. Because they made an effort, it felt like, to lose this football game. And games like this are costly, not only to your morale and confidence, but more importantly, to your place in the standings. They can wave goodbye to the 1 seed now. And the odds of them getting a bye are now predicated on Houston and Baltimore stumbling all over themselves in the final 6 weeks of the season. So it's a brutal loss for Kansas City that was unnecessary. I'm all right. That was unnecessary. It's not like they were thoroughly outplayed.
Right.
They were 97% to win the game when the defense gets the stop inside of 2 minutes, and they end up all of a sudden needing a last-second field goal to try to tie it, and the field goal gets blocked.
Yeah, so this is one of those games that during training camp you show your group to teach them about resilience and the fact that anything is possible. Yeah. It's like there's no chance that Kansas City can lose after they stop them on the 4th and 17. They get the field position that they got. And look, that third down play, I think they were trying to put the ball in their best player's hands, give him a chance to go win the game. He was smart in terms of getting down and eating up the clock. That all was sound, and I get it, but to botch 2 field goals the way that they did and the extra point, it's hard to do, and percentage-wise, that doesn't happen in very many NFL games.
Well, we knew Ryan Tannehill wasn't capable of getting a lot of explosive plays with his arm, but he's very capable with his leg. Now, I go back to Ryan Tannehill because we're in the same division, and he's able to really – people don't remember, he was a receiver in college.
At A&M.
Right, and he was able to be able to come out and really, put a lot of pressure on you. You saw him put his head down and get some of those first downs in the game. But let's just take the gray out. I mean, because we keep dancing around and we keep wanting to give credit to their defense. Their defense is soft. And I told you that it was going to struggle against a team like the Titans that's built with physicality. And when you look down at Derrick Henry, 23 attempts for 188 yards. I saw guys on that defense making business decisions. They didn't want to get on the train tracks when the train was coming through. And that's a problem because you got to be willing to jump on a grenade. And if you get ran over, you get ran over. We used to see this a lot of times with Brandon Jacobs. Guys are real hyped up to hit you in the first quarter. But when those body blows take place and late in games, they wear down. Those angles and putting that arm out and being able to put yourself in harm's way, you don't volunteer for that. So you look at that last drive, they were still staying within the game plan and running the football because they knew that was the best way to get explosive plays, and that's disrespectful to a defense.
And it's such a problem for Kansas City because if teams can control the ball and run the ball consistently, then where does that leave Patrick Mahomes? Exactly where you want him, on the sideline. And at some point, you've got to stop making business decisions because the best business decision you can make is go in, bow up, and try to get something done because in the offseason, Kansas City's going to make a bunch of business decisions on those guys who aren't holding up their end of the bargain right now.
But this was the issue that we talked about with this Chiefs team. They were going to go as far as their defense was going to allow them to go because we have no issues with them on offense and there's such speed and they were going to come out and put up all these points. Are you not concerned about their defense at all?
Well, listen, I think you have to be concerned about the run defense in particular, which was the bugaboo last year, and going into this game this year was bad, and then Derrick Henry runs for $188. But the point I'm making is, despite how great Derrick Henry was, this defense had allowed 20 points and got a stop on 4th and 17 to win. They thought to win the football game. I do wonder if the defense thought, we're done for the day. Because by the time they got back on the field, all of a sudden Ryan Tannehill looks like a quarterback that I've never seen Ryan Tannehill look like. And the players were running wide open. I think the defense maybe understandably thought, okay, we've now done our part of it. For Kansas City, it should be noted, by the way, that they were at one point in this game down 4 offensive linemen. Eric Fisher's still out. Dr. Duvernay-Tardif did not play in this football game. No, but it's a notable point.
No excuses.
It's not. No. It's not an excuse. It leads to this point. The most important thing for Kansas City, other than a win, was to see what Patrick Mahomes was going to look like post-dislocated kneecap. And he looked as good as he's ever looked. So if the Chiefs had won this game, but Mahomes looked like, okay, he's going to be a lesser version of himself, then you would almost feel worse than you do this morning, because the only hope they have is Mahomes playing at an MVP level and the defense finding a way to get a couple stops. There's no justifying this loss. Patty, as great as he was, that 3rd and 2 could have won the football game. Andy Reid, once again, has some game management questions. The defense, once again, gets run over, and even when you butcher the first field goal, you're up 5 against Tennessee, who has 90 seconds and no timeouts. That should be okay. And I understand they had the ball at the 38-yard line. You got to stop them from going 62 yards in 90 seconds with no timeouts, and they couldn't. All of that is unacceptable for a team that I still believe can win the Super Bowl, even though the last 6 weeks of football, we're running out of evidence to prove it.
I mean, some of the greatest teams I've ever been on, some of the greatest teams that I've ever witnessed you be on that gave us so much difficulty was the teams that understood situational football and not beating themselves. Understanding that the guy's getting a jump, you change the snap count on the field goal. Understanding what you're going to get, in a 2-minute situation, playing that bend, don't break type of defense is just good enough to get you beat. But they gave up an explosive play because they were defending the sideline, which is what you're supposed to do. But you have to understand that they had enough time to make throws through the middle. And that's the type of thing when you talk about not having a defense with, good football acumen. You don't have guys that's able to make a play because they understand the situation, but they understand formations and what that means. Every formation means something.
All right, let's move on. If Patrick Mahomes was good, boy, Lamar Jackson was great. Ravens coming off their big win over the Patriots, facing the winless Bengals yesterday. Yeah, they were favored to win, but the way they won was impressive. 2 words for you. Lamar Jackson, 15 of 17, 223 yards.
Video game stuff right there.
3 touchdowns, a perfect passer rating, and on the ground, 65 yards and a touchdown. Ravens get the win, 49-13. They improved to 7-2. Coach, how incredible was Lamar's performance in this one?
Yeah, Lamar's been incredible throughout the course of the season in the role that he has. And I think it's such a good fit with him and Greg Roman. The things that Greg did in San Francisco with Colin Kaepernick, you're seeing the same things with Lamar. And Lamar's done an outstanding job with it. And that could get better. Greg's one of the best I've ever been around in terms of scheming up not just the run game, but the quarterback-driven run game. Now, that being said, Cincinnati makes a lot of people feel really good and unfortunately look really good at this point for them. My big questions on Lamar have stayed the same is when everybody knows you got to pass it, when they can't play the game on their terms, will he be able to carry the team in those moments?
And he's probably, Coach, just quickly here, he's probably gone some way to answering that from where he was last season, correct?
I think there's been progress. I don't know if that's really been answered at this point.
Now, I've been around Greg Roman as the run coordinator, also as the offense coordinator in Baltimore, then in New York. He's tremendous in making sure that he schemes plays that mirror exactly pass and play action off of it. And the Ravens are creating a problem for teams that they don't often see. You don't see an offense like this with gun pistols, so many different formations, 3 tight ends. Their primary targets are tight ends, and then Hollywood Brown is giving them something that they didn't have last year. That's somebody that can stretch the football field off that play action. I feel like this is the perfect marriage, and this organization deserves a lot of credit for building an offense around a unique talent and making it work for him. Much like Cam Newton had when he came in, Colin Kaepernick, I think he's a more explosive athlete than Colin Kaepernick. He's not as big, and he's kept himself out of harm's way because I don't see him taking a lot of explosive, hard hits. And if he can stay healthy, and I mean, just look at the creativity. They had all 3. They had RG3 on the field yesterday.
The Heisman package.
The Heisman package, and it's just so much to prepare for, and it causes pause and hesitation. And that step of hesitation sets up the block for all those guys to get to the second level, and Ingram's the perfect back. Physical downhill to make you pay.
And I don't know what this is going to look like in 6 years, right? I don't know if he's going to stay healthy. I don't know if the league's going to catch up. I don't know any of that. But I know right now he's sensational. He started 17 games as a pro, 13-4. For a team that was dead in the water with Joe Flacco, that had to remake everything, he has been brilliant. You're right. The Cincinnati's a team that makes a lot of people look good, but he was perfect yesterday.
It's perfect against New England last week, too.
He was 15 of 17. Those 2 incompletions. One was a spike, one was a drop. I do know he is a quarterback that if you have a very bad defense, he's going to make you look historically bad. That's what he did to Miami in week 1. That's what he did yesterday to Cincinnati. And right now, I think Russell Wilson's a league MVP. And I think he's going to further prove that tonight because I think Seattle's going to win that football game. But if you're doing your MVP list and you don't have Lamar Jackson somewhere in the top 5, maybe the top 3, it's because you were down on him going into the draft and you don't want to admit you were wrong. Like the folks that question, can he be a quarterback in this league? Yes. Can he be an effective starting quarterback in this league? Yes. Can he play at an MVP level for at least a season? The answer is yes. He's proving that. And Baltimore right now looks like the most complete team in the AFC.
Yeah, if you look at the Pats, the Chiefs, and the Ravens, you look at the Ravens and you say top to bottom, offense, defense, and obviously a quarterback.
Take that, Bill Polian.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern.